Hello, everyone. I am so happy to have Gary Puddles as the member spotlight for our boost in December. So welcome, Gary.
Great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah. And I think that everybody who's probably going to tune into this already knows you. But for the maybe the little few that don't, why don't you give us a brief background about how you got into the industry?
Sure. So I got fired from my last job before I started my company, and I was unhappy at the job. They were unhappy with me. So I had already started looking, and I wrote down all the things that I liked in a business and all the things that I didn't like in a business, and I went on the internet to find a business to buy. It was at a point in my life where I had two young children and a wife and a town that I'd only lived in for a year and a half. So I wanted to find a business that existed and one that I could afford because I didn't have a lot of money. And that's how I came across a task marketing ad for three telephone answering services within an hour of my house. Now, how I went from seeing that ad into the business is a longer conversation, but I was able to identify all these things that I liked about the answering service, and I bought my first one about, I'd say, about 6 months later.
Wow, that's something. And I know how many offices you have now. Actually, for the viewers here, how many offices do you currently have?
Today we have about 30 teams. Many of our offices have been closed. So we're
Yeah.
probably 70% remote now. So even though we still call some of the sites by the names of the last physical office, we still are we still only have fewer than 20 physical sites, but we have over 30 teams.
Yeah, that's the way of the world today with remotes. So tell us a little bit about what was your first experience with Camex?
So my first experience with Chemex was in Halifax, which is even funnier because now I have a team in Halifax. But my best memory was going to a bar with the Chemex people called the Lower Deck, and it was the strangest thing. I was an American, and while I had spent some time in Canada, most of my time was spent at that point in Toronto, in Scarborough, and in Etobicoke around the GTA. So I'm in Halifax for the first time, and we're at this bar, and all they serve is rum and beer. And I didn't drink either of those. So it was the weirdest experience, but I remember being in this bar, and the people were so extraordinarily different than the American associations, and they were so kind and so much fun. They were so warm and inviting, and and those are the earliest memories that I have that people were genuinely interested in getting to know me and making sure that I felt part of the family.
And since then, I know like your involvement with Camex now, you're at our conference every year. Not only do you show up, like you really participate. You've been on panels, you've spoke for us before, you've done many keynotes with us, and of course, you've been instrumental in running our breast cancer fundraising with our silent auction for years and years. So much gratitude to you from our association. Um, Anything else that you want to talk about with what you do with Camex now and what it means to you?
So, what I do with Chemex now is I participate. I show up and participate. Sort of what you were talking about, Linda. This year I gave a couple of presentations that are not ones that we normally talk about. My last presentation, for example, was on some of the considerations of being in the cloud, where instead of the old days, we were paying for servers in our business, and then once you paid for them, they were there. Now we're paying for storage and size, and all of those things are completely different. I think what makes Camex so unique is that because it's a smaller group and it's made up of different vendor members, we're getting a larger cross section and a larger view across all the platforms, across all the technologies, and that gives us as Camex members an ability to understand the incredibly changing dynamics of our business more and more every day.
Well said. Absolutely well said. And that's where I feel that we're going as well. And then lastly, tell us a little bit about yourself, your personal life, your family, and maybe some of your hobbies that you do.
Well, I'm the father of five. Most of you know that I married a Canadian woman from Calgary. Grew up in Montreal and then moved to Calgary. She brought three kids to the party. I brought two, and so we're also grandparents. We have our first child and one on the way, and so we're really lucky to have that. And everybody knows who knows me for 5 seconds knows that I'm a drummer in a couple of bands. And finding my music when all the kids were in college was one of the greatest things I did. I am a hustler. Most people know I don't claim to be the smartest guy, but I do work really hard. And what I found is having a hobby that takes you out. Some people like to ski, some people like to play golf, and I really love music. And Linda, I was able to do my first show almost 10 years ago with you,
I
and you
know.
got to sing. And every so often, I sneak in that recording, and I make people hear your beautiful voice, and so. I do that for fun, and being a grandparent is the greatest thing. And then I travel, love
Yeah.
to travel, and my wife and I, who are great travel buddies, as most of you have seen her at CAMEX conferences. It's always great to bring her because she always feels the love of the members, even though she doesn't really work in the business very much.
Yeah, that's great. And you mentioned the word fun because when I think of you as fun. And I've attended many of your conferences, and I know our love of music is something that we really, really share. But Gary, thank you so much for spending a little bit of time with me today and sharing your love of CAMEX and your life with the members of CAMEX. And all the best as we get to the end of 2025 and jump into excuse me, the end of 2024 and as we jump into 2025. Thanks, Gary.
Thank you, Linda.